Hey everybody, it's PJ from Wisconsin Air Gunners. Welcome to part 2 of my series on winter indoor Olympic shooting. Today we're going to be talking about the AirVenturi Comp10 pistol. Thanks to my friends at Pyramid Air for sending this over for the series. Want to talk through its features and get to a little bit of shooting with it. So to start off, I want to talk about first things first and how you put air into it. So in order to fill this air gun up, you have to take off the cylinder. It very easily unthreads and you will hear a little hiss of air. And then once you have it off, there are 2 adapters that come with the kit. One is for screwing directly into a DIN valve, like on a scuba tank, and the other is for connecting a Foster quick connect to it. So you have choices on how you're going to fill it up. It fills to 250 bar, so you want to make sure you don't go over that, and you can certainly fill to less than that. Let's say you were hand pumping, and then you kind of figure out how much pumping do you have to do in order to get a reasonable number of shots for your shooting session. But it's very easy. It's easy to know whether you've got the right amount of air in it. It's easy to not overfill as long as you're paying attention. And once you have this filled up, you basically just take the adapter off and then thread it right back onto the Comp10. This method of filling is pretty normal, I guess you'd say. A lot of us who are doing other kinds of sport shooting are used to having an external, fill probe right on the gun or a Foster connector. But on the competition Olympic style shooting guns, you do have a bunch of them where you have to actually take the cylinder off. Now, I did find that the first time I did this, when I threaded the cylinder on, because the pistol wasn't cocked, a bunch of air rushed out the barrel. So I would recommend cocking the pistol first and then threading it on. And then with a safe backstop, you can dry fire and the weapon or pistol is back to safe. It's a small air cylinder, so when I put it on and the valve was open, I had to refill because it doesn't take long for quite a bit of the air to go out the barrel. So let's talk about features. So the front sight is a pretty simple affair. It's a nice wide blade, so it's easy to pick up and easy to see on either side to make sure that you have everything even as you shoot. And then on the rear, we have 2 different adjustment screws. One for windage, that is moving the rear sight back and forth, left or right, to move your point of impact relative to your point of aim. And then a second screw for adjusting elevation, for raising your point of impact relative to point of aim up or down. So when you get to sighting, you'll want to work with those 2 in order to make those adjustments. Loading to fire, actually, let's talk about dry fire mode first. So this pistol does have the ability to do dry fire, and what you do is flip the lever right behind the trigger from its down or firing position up into the S position, and then go ahead and pull the lever all the way back. It will not, you can kind of see here how it's sprung up, it will not go into the full down position, and now you're in dry fire mode. And what that lets you do is practice trigger pull independent of using air and pellets. Most like of this caliber and caliber quality, not caliber. Most Olympic style pistols and rifles have a dry firing mode so that you can work independent trigger pull without the need to fire the gun. And even though this is a very low powered air gun, as air guns go, and it doesn't use tons of air, it's a matter of being able to do this practice safely in places where maybe you don't have access to either an air supply or a safe backstop, or you're concerned about too much noise, that being able to do this dry fire training really makes a difference. If you think about your hand for a minute and the way in which your hand was developed, your hand was developed to grasp things with all of your fingers and your thumb working together to hold on to things. What we're doing when we're firing either a pistol or rifle is typically something that really our hand wasn't evolved to do. We have grabbing with the lower three fingers, either a thumb up or a wraparound with the thumb, but then we're trying to move this one independent of all the other ones, because if they're all squeezing as you pull the trigger, you're going to rotate, not voluntarily, but it's going to happen. You're going to rotate that muzzle to the left as a right-handed shooter, and your pellets are going to go in that direction. It's a problem we see a lot in firearms training, and something that dry fire training can help you to develop an independent movement of just the trigger finger without his or her three friends trying to do the same thing. So it's a very useful addition and an excellent reason why this might be a good training pistol for you, because independent trigger control and independent trigger squeeze is part of absolutely every shooting discipline. And this one just lets you do that practice. When you want to switch back to full-on shooting, flip this lever down, back into fire, cock it, forward, and if it had a pellet in it, it would be ready to shoot. You can dry fire this pistol without going into the dry fire mode. It's okay. It won't hurt anything. But you may be in a place where it's a little bit sensitive to that noise. Noise-wise, this is not a loud pistol at all. It sounds a little bit like a small balloon popping, is how I'd gauge the noise. Other things that are adjustable include the grip. Now, in terms of like turn a wrench adjustability, this shelf, which is kind of meant to sandwich your hand in there to give you a little bit of counterbalance as you have this held out in front of you. This is at its furthest low point. I have fairly large hands. Usually in a glove, I'm wearing an extra large or a double extra large. So this is actually maybe a little bit small for me, but it's made out of a wood that is really meant to be shaped. And if you pay careful attention to top tier shooters on the line, you will see that there are all kinds of modifications, and in some cases, material being removed and other material being added on as they make this pistol grip their own. This is all wood, and it is meant to be modified. So a sander, Dremel, whatever tool you want to use. I would probably remove a little bit of the material there, and I would also probably remove just a little bit of the material under the tang. You could do a little bit of shaping on the finger grips if that suited you, and if your hand's on the smaller size or side, you loosen this up and you can actually move this shelf up to take up some more of that space. So it's got a fair amount of adjustability. The manual does a good job of talking about trigger adjustments. I'm not going to go into that here because I would recommend you read the directions, and I find this trigger to be adjusted just fine for me. But there is a step-by-step color, I think it's a color picture, but how do you do it is all outlined in the manual. I do want to see if we can get a reading on the trigger scale with this. So let's take a look at that. So as always, when doing any kind of trigger pull testing, the pistol has to be unloaded, made in a safe condition, and in this case, I'm pointed in a safe direction towards a backstop that I've moved over. So let's see. It says 1 pound, 2.1 ounces. £1 pound, 3.2 ounces. £1 pound, 3.1 ounces. So an average of 1 pound, 2.8 ounces. Really, really light trigger. If you've never worked with a trigger like this, you're gonna walk away grinning. And through experience, what I would recommend is if you're handing this to someone else to try and shoot, go ahead, put it in that dry fire mode, and have them do their first trigger pull just without any air and without any pellet, because if they're used to other kinds, especially firearms triggers, there's a really good chance that they're gonna send this pellet off into a direction that they don't mean to, or you don't want them to, or they shouldn't, because they're probably going to be surprised by how light and crisp it really is. That's a pretty impressive trigger, and it's really fun to pull. So I've got some pellets. Going to use some FX 8.4 grain pellets. May not be the perfect pellet for this gun, but it's what I had on hand to try. The loading is really simple. You pull up on this lever, and that's going to open the breech for you. And all you have to do is put the pellet on that groove and then probe it forward, and it's ready to shoot. I'm not in an ideal position here on the bench. But it's just that simple. You want to load again, up on the lever, drop it into that groove, probe it forward, and there you go. Those two shots, by the way, are touching. All right, let's do a little shot string. We are at the 5-yard line. I walked back to 10 meters, and at 10 meters, the black part of the target is just a little bit wider than the width of the front sight as I look down the pistol. So it seems prudent, in fairness to the pistol, if we're going to show you what kind of accuracy you can expect, it seems fair to shoot at a little bit closer distance. So right now I'm at 5 yards, and we're going to go for a 10-shot target card. think that's 5. And I've lost count. I'm going to take just a couple of steps down range and see how many that has been. It's either 9 or 10. We're going to take one more for good measure. Okay, let's go look. That's actually not a bad group for not having done this kind of shooting. I'm going to go with I'm pretty happy with that. There's nothing outside of the 8s. And at this distance, for the first time, just setting the Comp10 up, I probably could make a slight adjustment to the sights yet. And obviously, as I work my way back, I'm going to have to do that. I'll tell you right now, I would say the Comp10 is more accurate than I am. And it's not, based on the features and what I'm seeing from accuracy, certainly not a ridiculously expensive entry level for this kind of shooting, which when the trigger breaks, I mean, there is a distinct feel. It comes up against a wall and then pop, and it's, I mean, you've been listening to the video of me shoot. It is not super loud. In fact, I'd say you could make an argument that the pellet trap I'm using is actually louder than the gun itself, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially for those of us who are shooting in neighborhoods where there might be restrictions or people might be overly concerned about the things related even to air guns that they see. So I've got some work to do. I need to practice. I am certain that there will be somebody who has loads of feedback for my shooting form. This is a very different style of shooting than what I did for, well, a whole lifetime professionally as a police officer. And pretty cool and a lot of fun to try something new. So next time, what we're going to take a look at is hopefully me shooting a little more accurately and get into talking about how you could score your Olympic targets at home. And I may even take my hand at building a pellet trap, which you've seen kind of, if you watch the last video, you've seen some stills of, but I want to see if I can build a pellet trap for my garage that's even a little quieter, which means that I'd have evenings to do this without disturbing neighbors or my wife. Really liking the AirVenturi Comp10. Thanks again to Pyramid Air for sending this over to me. And until the next video, everybody, shoot safe, shoot straight, and we'll see you around.